In the team style of Counter-Strike, there are heavy execute, very tactical teams, just like in any sport. And then there are also teams that seem to find success by having a loose default style. And that isn't to say they're not disciplined, because especially in Counter-Strike, you'll find that their discipline comes in terms of roles and in terms of their default in the beginning, so or their structure or their formation. So although they might not be very defined and static in what they will be doing, and they're running a very loose style, everybody basically knows what their job is and what their requirements are. And although I made a video about roles already, I thought it would be nice to make a video more or less about roles while I'm watching one of the most loose teams that still work. They have teamwork. People say, they're about just a bunch of AMAs and that's not necessarily true. And I think their whole teamliness starts with this player, Smits. So everything they do, this guy is the glue. And if you see where they're set up or how they're set up, they have 3 people in alt, 1 guy in Mexi Pit. This is a very standard default setup, and 1 fast lurker in banana. Now Smits is clearing dark room, so eventually one of his teammates, and I'm going to replay this from everybody's perspective, can get into dark, and that teammate being Shocks, I believe. And Happy will get into long haul. Smits has just thrown a smoke for arches, and now he's flashing Kiyoshima and Shocks into mid. Now Kiyoshima and Shocks and Smits will all triple peek this right side mid. Now that right there is the essence of like a loose style of teamwork. They had a general idea of what they were going to do. It's very simplistic, and they're doing it together. Now, just so I can explain what's going on there and show what Smits was doing, he's the support player, so you got to see what Smits was doing. This is what Kiyoshima, more or less the entry fragger, sort of a dual entry here with Shocks, although I would say that Shocks has an advantage to Kiyo in this particular play. Now, Kiyoshima in the beginning of the round, he has a responsibility in the default, and he's just responsible for mid. And he's able to do this first by flashing his way into Mexi Pit, and then by just watching any sort of mid aggression from Mexi Pit. He's a very good shot. It's very easy for him to do this. And you'll be able to see how Smits sets up his teammates here. Not just with him clearing dark. You'll see it later on. He does it with a molly, by the way. Just he didn't have enough money for a molly this round. But here he actually gets Kiyo, who completely trusts his support player. Kiyo is only going to be as good as his support players, same as Shocks, to flash him through. And then they both double tag that. Kiyo looks behind him at that smoke. Now Kiyo survives here. He's able to get that second frag, along with Smits and Shoxy. But then he finally dies here. And how he dies is with aggression. They know that there's 1 person left in this bomb site, right? In the A bomb site. If you're considering the logic that they will have 2B and 1 or 2B and 3A, right? And you already killed 2A players. 1 on the porch and 1 under it. So now if you were to look at this from Shocks' perspective, Shocks in his role being the playmaker. Shocks is ultimately the best player on his team, and everything that they do aggressively, that they do overtly, he has the most control over what happens in rounds in taking over bomb sites. And everything Happy and NBK do are kind of just like, they have a lot of ability to make plays and get frags, but it's really more or less through Shocks and Kiyoshima's aggression that is set up by Smits. So Shocks gets into bedroom, which was kind of already cleared, and now he's ready right now to peek on these 2 flashes. So Smits throws his flashes, and they're already peeking, and now Shocks is actually like working off of their peaks. And now he does it again. Kiyoshima knows that there's a guy in sight. Kiyoshima aggresses towards him, and Shocks is able to actually trade this. Now, this is why the playmaker role is so important, because Shocks also has control over the round, mid-round right now. So he was there in the early round. He could have done something early round. He's here mid-round, and he's here late round now, in the later part of the round post-plant, and he can still win from here on out just by virtue of his positioning and how his team's able to work. So he was able to get a frag there just based on being in that position of being a playmaker. Now, if you look at the fast lurk, what is usually the fast lurk, this play is actually the reason why a fast lurk is a guy who can work solo, and he can work by himself, and he can either kill somebody, but he makes sure he's not just some brain dead idiot running in and dying. So he can be by himself and not die alone. And it takes a lot of awareness. See, NBK notices there from the smoke and what else is being thrown, the molly, that they're going to aggressively play down banana. So now, instead of him usually getting to his usual spot of wood logs, he cancels, and he's just being responsible for any sort of banana aggression. You'll see early round, there's something that he's responsible for, just like there's something that everybody's responsible for. You know, Happy being responsible for Hall's door, Smith's being responsible for the balcony bedroom area, and getting shocks in there and clearing darks with him. Now, as his teammates are making this aggression, NBK knows what he can do. He could have pushed up banana and made a really risky play, and we've seen him do that before, but he doesn't necessarily need to do that. He's able to throw this smoke, and even here, now he comes off as a late round player. He's able to just sort of work off of his teammates' aggression in pit and in sight, and sort of take what they give him. So he sees what they're giving him. He sees they're giving him all this space, and he can get into this position and just get a lurk frag there. Now, unfortunately, he gets traded there and dies. And I think that the smoke that he threw worked against him. So if you look at like Happy, you could even call Happy the fast lurker. So this is in this play. Sometimes one lurker is going to be working a little bit slower than the other. Sometimes, you know, that lurker can be flanking and working very fast, or they could be like there the whole time and you don't even know it, and they're not working very fast, but they're still lurking or flanking. So this is how Happy goes to make sure that there's pretty much nobody coming out of the bedroom. I think he's also calling, you have to remember. So a lot of what he's devoting his mental faculties to right here is calling. Happy is able to get into apps, and once he sees what his teammates are able to do and help them, he can go into long haul. He could have been in long haul sooner, obviously, but he's mostly just there now, later on, and mostly there to call. So once that smoke goes off by Smiths, it's funny how this smoke will like later work against him. I mean, Happy, Smith, or Happy, not Smith, NBK through that smoke. NBK, Happy, and Shocks are more or less put in positions by their role. See, NBK died and Happy couldn't trade him, and Happy ended up just getting spammed through the smoke. There's a lot of things that Happy could have probably done better that round, obviously. We've seen him do numerous great things in other rounds, but that's generally the gist of how their roles work. And here you can see they have pretty much the same default that they're setting up again, with 3 people in alt. This time, as Shocks is clearing bedroom, you'll see Smiths he has a molly at this point, and he can clear dark. Once everything is situated and taken care of, he smokes the arch side, as he did before, to sort of make it so that his teammate won't have to deal with a crossfire. And then he's flashing them up. Again, they're literally running pretty much the same play. This time there wasn't a smoke here, and this time LDLC White backed off. But it does give the terrorists more map control and an advanced map presence. As you see, it did drag one of the players from B over to Speedway. So now there's only really one guy patrolling the B bomb site. And that's just a general overview of roles, looking at EnVyUs and looking at Smiths as a support player primarily. We're looking at teamwork, what kind of teamwork you can accomplish just from roles, and then also just looking at what it means to be a good support player and how a good support player like Smits can set things up for his team to work off of, and how a good entry fragger like Kiyoshima can, make things happen as well in that sense, and open things up for a playmaker like Shoxy.